love them? That's not the question. The question is, what are you doing with that love? In the winter of 1869, a Russian novelist sat down to write a letter to his younger brother. Leo Tolstoy was 41 years old. He had already published War and Peace. He was, by almost any measure, one of the most celebrated writers alive, and he was deeply, genuinely convinced that his younger brother Sergei was wasting his life. Sergei was a landowner and a musician, a man of quiet pleasures, local friendships, a certain contentment with things as they were. He had no particular ambition for greatness. He wanted simply to live. Tolstoy could not leave this alone. Over the following decades, he wrote to Sergei, lectured him, argued with him, sent him articles and pamphlets and books. He redesigned Sergei's farm according to his own principles. He prescribed dietary regimens, offered spiritual guidance, outlined a complete program for the moral improvement of his brother's character. Sergei, by all accounts, bore this with considerable patience and continued living more or less as he always had. What is striking about this story, and what makes it something other than a story about Tolstoy's ego, is that Tolstoy was almost certainly acting from love. He genuinely believed that Sergei's happiness depended on Sergei becoming a different kind of person. He genuinely believed that his superior insight into the nature of a good life obligated him to share it, repeatedly, insistently, for years. He could not quite distinguish between loving his brother and needing his brother to change. Those two things felt identical to him. In the Buddhist understanding of love, specifically in the teaching of metta, which is usually translated as loving kindness, but means something considerably more precise, Tolstoy was doing something with a particular name. He was loving with upadana, with clinging, with the kind of love that is not quite love because it cannot separate the person from the idea of who the person should become. This is not a story about Tolstoy's failure. It is a story about a confusion so common, so human, so deeply woven into the way we love the people closest to us that most of us will never notice we are doing it until someone points it out. And even then, the pointing out will probably feel like an accusation rather than a description. So think about the person you love most completely, the relationship that feels most important to you, the one you invest the most in, the one you think about when things go wrong. Now ask yourself, with as much honesty as you can bring to it, when you imagine them in 5 years, in the version of the future you'd most like to see, are they exactly as they are now? Or are they better, healthier maybe, more at peace, more successful, drinking less, or exercising more, or having worked through the thing you know they need to work through but haven't yet? More open to the conversation they've been avoiding for 3 years, more like the person you can see they could be if they would only, there it is, if they would only. That sentence left unfinished is the most honest map of where love ends and the project begins. You send the article about the habit you wish they'd break. You mention gently for the 4th time this year that you think they'd really benefit from talking to someone. You notice the way they responded to a difficult situation, and you store it quietly as evidence of the thing you've been wanting to address. You find yourself scanning their choices, what they ordered, how much they drank, whether they called their mother back. Not because you're keeping score, but because you care. You read something that makes you think of them, an insight, an article, a passage from a book, and you forward it with a note that says, thought you might find this interesting, when what you mean is, I think this is what you need, because you care. That is the most genuinely confusing part of this. The caring is real, the love is real, and yet something has crept into the love, something that quietly treats another person not as a complete human being living their own life, but as a work in progress, a project, an unfinished version of the person you need them to become before you can fully love what's in front of you. Most of us have been on both sides of this. You know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. That particular mixture of feeling seen and feeling assessed, of knowing someone loves you and also knowing that their love comes with a blueprint of who you should eventually be. It is exhausting in a way that is hard to name. Not because the suggestions are wrong, not because the care isn't real, but because being someone's project means you are never quite finished, never quite enough, never quite at the place where you can simply be without the quiet hum of improvement running in the background of the relationship. It is not an easy thing to carry, and it is even harder to admit when you are the one doing the carrying. The word the Buddhist tradition uses for what's happening here is upadana. We've talked about upadana before in this series, in the context of grievance, of forgiveness, of the patterns we repeat. But upadana in the context of love takes on a specific and particularly uncomfortable shape. Upadana means clinging. More precisely, it means the act of grasping at something as though it were fixed, as though it were yours, as though the distance between what it is and what you need it to be is a problem you are responsible for closing. When upadana enters a relationship, it doesn't arrive as cruelty. It arrives as care. It arrives as the completely sincere belief that you can see something in the other person that they cannot yet see in themselves, a potential, a possibility, a better version, and that your love obligates you to help them reach it. This belief is not always wrong. Sometimes we do see things in the people we love that they genuinely cannot see. Sometimes the encouragement to change is exactly what someone needs. The line between loving support and upadana is not always obvious. Buddhism draws it here. Loving support asks, what do you need? Upadana says, I know what you need. Loving support holds space for the answer to surprise you. Upadana has already decided what the answer should be. Loving support can be genuinely okay if the answer turns out to be, I am fine as I am. Upadana cannot, because upadana has staked something on the other person changing, something it may not even be fully aware of. What has it staked? This is where the teaching becomes genuinely uncomfortable. The Buddha in the Majjhima Nikaya, one of the oldest collections of his teachings, described upadana as arising from tanha, from craving, from the mind's fundamental resistance to things being exactly as they are. When upadana enters a relationship, it is almost always because something in us cannot fully accept the other person as they actually are right now, in this moment. Not because we are unkind, not because we don't love them, but because there is something in their current state that is difficult for us to sit with. Their unhappiness makes us anxious. Their self-destructive choices make us feel helpless. Their stagnation touches something unresolved in ourselves. Their refusal to change confirms a fear we have about the relationship's future. The project, the gentle, persistent effort to improve them, is also a way of managing our own discomfort, of not having to simply be present with someone who is struggling, of doing something rather than sitting with the weight of not being able to fix it. Think about what this actually feels like in the body. You are sitting across from them at dinner. They say something that reminds you of the pattern, the one you've talked about, the one they've said they're working on, and you feel it. A slight tightening across the shoulders, a familiar wariness, the internal calculation of whether this is the moment or whether you should wait. That moment, right there before you've decided anything, is the project running, scanning, assessing, preparing its next move. The project is not a conversation. The project is a posture, a permanent orientation toward the gap between who they are and who you need them to become. There is a particular moment in family therapy, a moment that therapists describe encountering often, where a person who has spent years trying to change someone they love is asked a simple question. What would it mean for you if they never changed? The answers to that question reveal what the project was actually carrying. Sometimes it reveals fear of watching someone you love suffer without being able to stop it. Sometimes it reveals grief for a version of the relationship that might not be possible if the other person stays exactly as they are. Sometimes it reveals something harder, the recognition that your love has come with conditions that you never consciously set, but that have been quietly operating for a very long time. The psychologist Carl Rogers, whose work on unconditional positive regard arrived at the same place as Buddhist metta through a completely different route, spent decades documenting what happens when people experience love without conditions. Not love that tolerates their flaws, not love that accepts them while hoping they'll improve. Love that genuinely does not require them to be different in order to be fully received. His findings across 40 years of clinical work were consistent. People who experience this kind of love change more, not less. They become more fully themselves. They take more risks. They grow in directions that nobody predicted, not because they were pushed, but because they were given enough room. The project, it turns out, is often what stops the very growth it's trying to create. Buddhism's alternative to upadana is not indifference. This is the part that usually gets misunderstood. The assumption that if you release the need to change someone, you must be releasing your investment in them entirely. That equanimity in love means distance. That acceptance means passivity. Metta, loving kindness, is not a soft or passive quality. The traditional practice of metta meditation asks practitioners to hold a specific intention. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be free from suffering. Notice what this does and does not say. May you be happy in the way I have decided is happiness. It does not say, may you be well according to the standards I have set. It does not say, may you be free from suffering by the route I have chosen for you. It says, may you. 2 words. The entire weight of the practice is in those 2 words. The recognition that the other person is a separate self, with their own understanding of happiness, their own timing, their own path through whatever they're carrying, and that your love can genuinely hold them without needing to steer them. This is much harder than it sounds, because the steering feels like love. It has the texture of love. It comes from the same place as love. The difference is almost invisible from the inside. It becomes visible only when you ask, what happens in me when they don't take the advice, when they don't make the change, when they look at everything I've offered and decide quietly that they're not going to? If what rises is disappointment, genuine, specific disappointment, as though something you needed has been withheld, that is upadana revealing itself. If what rises is something softer, a concern that can coexist with their refusal, a love that doesn't change shape based on what they decide, that is closer to metta. Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen teacher who spent the last years of his life in California and who we've returned to in this series before, used to tell his students, each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement. Both sentences are true at the same time. Neither cancels the other. The person you love is complete as they are right now. A full human being, not a half-finished draft. And they are also, like all of us, somewhere on a path that has not ended. The question is not whether to care about their growth. The question is whether your caring leaves room for them to grow in directions you haven't imagined. Whether your love can survive their becoming someone slightly different from the person you needed them to be. There is also something that needs to be said plainly about the cases where this teaching is genuinely hard. When someone you love is harming themselves, when the choice you wish they would make is not a preference but a matter of real well-being. The teaching of metta does not ask you to stand by silently. It does not ask you to watch someone you love walk into damage you can see coming and call that acceptance. It asks something more specific. It asks you to speak once, clearly and without agenda, to say what you see, what you fear, what you need, and then to let the response be theirs. Because the part you cannot control, the part that upadana tries so hard to control and fails and tries again and fails again, is the choosing. The choosing belongs to them. It always did. Knowing this does not make it easy. It makes it honest. And honesty in love is sometimes the most difficult thing to offer, and the most genuinely caring. There is something I want to say plainly, that most conversations about this topic find a way to soften. Some of the time, the person you are trying to change does not want to change, not because they don't see what you see, but because what you see is real and they have decided, consciously or not, that the cost of changing is higher than the cost of staying, and the project, your careful, loving, persistent effort, cannot reach that calculation. It lives on the outside of it. More than that, sometimes the project's the problem, not in the sense that your care is the cause of their difficulty, but in the sense that when someone is managed and monitored and gently corrected over a long period of time, they often stop making their own choices in any real way. They perform the changes you want to see briefly on the surface to reduce the pressure. Or they resist harder, not because they disagree with the change itself, but because the alternative is losing their own sense of agency inside a relationship that needs them to be a project. The resistance is not always about the issue. Sometimes it is about the relationship itself, about the need to be someone who has not been decided in advance. The cost of releasing the project is not just learning to tolerate uncertainty. It is accepting that the relationship you are in may not be the relationship you imagined when you started improving them. That the person across from you, beloved without agenda, may surprise you, may grow in directions you didn't plan for, may become someone who is genuinely happy in ways you don't fully understand, or may not change at all. And the question of whether you can love them either way, that is the actual question, the one that the project has been postponing. If you've been in a relationship for a long time, 10 years, 20 years, more, and you're recognizing something of yourself in what we've been talking about, there may be a particular kind of discomfort in that recognition. Not just discomfort, something closer to grief. Because to see the project clearly is also to see the years spent on it. The conversations, the articles, the gentle suggestions, the energy directed at a problem that was never quite yours to solve. And with that recognition can come the fear that you have somehow loved badly for a long time, that the love was less real because it came with conditions you didn't know you'd set. I want to offer a different way of holding that. The desire to improve the people you love is not a failure of love. It is a feature of caring deeply in a culture that has given us very few models for how to be present with someone's pain without trying to fix it. We were taught that love means help. That help means action. That action means changing things. Nobody told us that sometimes the most radical thing love can do is simply stay, without a blueprint, without a timeline, without needing the other person to become proof that the love was worthwhile. Nobody modeled this for most of us. Not our parents, who loved us and also had clear ideas about who we should become. Not our culture, which measures love by what you're willing to do for someone, and doing usually means fixing. So the project was not a character flaw. It was the best available map for a territory that nobody taught us to navigate. The capacity to love someone without needing them to change, to hold them fully in the specific shape they actually are, is not something most people arrive at young. It comes from having been loved that way yourself, at least once, or from having been on the receiving end of the project long enough to understand, in your body, what it costs, or from having loved someone for long enough that the project has quietly exhausted itself, and what remains, what was always underneath it, is something simpler and much harder to name. You are not starting late. You are starting with the specific knowledge that only comes from having tried the other way first. And that knowledge, the kind that lives in the body, not just in the understanding, is the only place this particular practice can begin. The one thing I'd like to leave you with is not a practice with instructions. It's a question. The next time you find yourself wanting something different for someone you love, the next time you notice the familiar pull toward the gentle suggestion, the forwarded article, the conversation you've been meaning to have, before you say anything, ask yourself this: am I doing this for them? Or am I doing this because I cannot sit comfortably with things being exactly as they are? That question will not always have a clean answer. Sometimes it will be both at once. Sometimes the honest answer will be, I don't know. But asking it, really asking it, and staying with the discomfort of not knowing immediately is already something different from what the project does. The project does not ask. The project already knows. Tolstoy continued writing his letters to Sergei for the rest of his life, and Sergei, to the very end, continued living more or less as he always had, quietly, contentedly, by the standards of a life that was not Tolstoy's life and never needed to be. There is no record of whether Tolstoy ever made peace with this, but there is a passage in his later diaries, written in the last years of his life, after decades of trying to reform the world, where he wrote simply, "The only thing I can change is myself, and even that is very hard." It is not a triumphant line, It doesn't resolve anything, but it is honest. And in its honesty, it is closer to love than any of the letters were. If this landed somewhere real for you, if it named something you've been circling without quite finding the words for, don't rush past it. Let it sit. Come back to it when you're in the middle of it. Not now when it's abstract, but then when it's happening and you can feel the pull of the project before you've decided anything. Next time, we're going to look at something that sits right at the edge of what we've been building toward. The specific loneliness that arrives not from being isolated, but from being surrounded by people and still feeling like none of them quite reach you. What Buddhism calls the loneliness of shallow connection, and what it offers in return. Now that one goes somewhere unexpected. I'll see you there. And if this has been worth your time, if something in it moved, the simplest thing you can do is stay.